Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, Extending Your Workflow with RPA, with Navient's very own Jeff Comer. Jeff is a sales engineer who has had his fair share in playing around with RPA, and today he's going to provide an overview of what RPA is and examples for how you can use it to enhance your workflow processes. Jeff?
Thanks, Nella, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Nella said, we're here to talk about how we can extend your workflow using RPA. So let's get started. First, robotic process automation, that's what RPA stands for. And it's simply a set of tools that can be configured or trained to perform tasks largely completed by people using mouse and keyboard today. Of course, you can do much more with robotic process automation, but as it relates to today's topic, we're just going to focus on replacing worker-driven tasks. So for our agenda, we're going to talk about how robots can increase the level of automation within our workflows. Then we're going to take a little bit of time and talk about the Hyland RPA suite as an example of an RPA toolkit that can be used to accomplish this. And then finally, we're going to take a look under the covers and see exactly how we're linking our robotic process automation and our on-base workflows together. So starting off, we'll talk about the workflow and RPA together. And to do this, to illustrate this, I picked a pretty common example, accounts payable invoice processing workflow. It consists of a series of process steps or queues, and the queues can contain work items much like your email in your inbox. Now, these queues can be a combination of automatic and manual steps. The workflow engine can examine the data associated with each work item and potentially make decisions to move that item along in the process. Sometimes the decisions are complex or require information that the workflow doesn't have, and that's when we need to stop the process and get some human input. Of course, the goal of our workflow development is to automate as much as possible so we can increase speed, accuracy, and reduce the demands on our workforce. So I have to put this silly slide up because every time I think about RPA and replacing human work, I think of this cartoon from when I was a kid. But the term that probably makes more sense that in this context is straight through processing. And this describes a process where the workflow has all the information it requires to move an item from beginning to end without stopping for user input. And in this case, we have an invoice that comes into the workflow, it gets sent to an evaluation queue, and the logic in that queue determines that the item can be directly sent to the ERP for posting. And so some people might call this the happy path, right? The path of least resistance, the path that needed the least amount of human interaction. So what kind of decisions might be taking place inside this evaluation queue? Well, it could be things like, do I understand the vendor associated with this invoice, and is that vendor in my vendor master in my ERP? Is this an invoice that requires me to gather additional information from the purchasing party in other parts of the organization? Maybe do I have a purchase order associated with this invoice that tells me that the invoice is for the right thing and the right amount, and I can just move forward, and so on and so forth. The results of this evaluation will indicate whether or not we're on the happy path or if we need to stop. And so here's a few examples where human judgment needs to be gathered. This means the workflow has to stop and wait on somebody to interact with it before it can proceed. Maybe we need to decide which account we want to use, or whether or not the purchase met our needs, or we have some sort of an exception that we just need to sort out before we can process this any further. And so to do that, we can present our user with actions or choices to guide the item forward or backwards through the process. And in the OnBase workflow, we call these ad hoc actions. And wherever you see an ad hoc action, you should be asking yourself, is this an opportunity for me to automate this particular task? Because an ad hoc action is requiring human input, which means it's stopping our workflow and it's slowing things down. So sometimes we have some of these activities are just busy work. In case you were wondering why I stuck a beaver icon on the screen. There's some things that maybe the workflow can't address on its own, but they don't require a complex decision. There's just something missing with regard to the capabilities of the workflow or the target system that we need to interact with that doesn't allow us to automate it. And this is an opportunity for RPA, and this is an opportunity to further automate our process and increase our level of automation. And if we can automate these tasks successfully, then we can end up with more happy paths, right? And we can have more items going through our workflow untouched. So that's the goal of what we're going to look at today. You're not going to be able to automate everything, but there are low-hanging fruit that maybe RPA extends your capabilities of automation further. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples in live action here. So this is a example of my OnBase system, and here's my OnBase AP workflow here. I'm going to move to my missing vendor queue, and this is all happening. This is just a video I'm running, by the way. So you'll be able to see the bots in action. Here I'm going to select an invoice that's in my missing vendor queue for Donald's Packaging Company. And I actually created an item or an ad hoc action to allow RPA to create this vendor for me in my ERP. So I select this action, the workflow is communicating with my RPA manager, and it's instructing the manager to fire off a robot and get the robot ready to execute this task. So we can see a few background activities happening here with the robot. And in a second, it's going to launch my ERP application. It's going to select the create vendor option from the menu on the left. And it's going to enter the information from OnBase into my vendor creation screen of my ERP and select create vendor. So just that easy. But we're able to carry out a fair number of steps in an automated fashion. Now I'll show you one more example where I have an invoice and pending post to ERP. Maybe I don't have the ability to automatically send invoice information into my ERP, and RPA can bridge this gap for me. So again, I have an invoice and I have an ad hoc action at the top called create invoice in ERP via RPA, lots of acronyms. And I'll go ahead and we'll execute that workflow or that ad hoc task. Same thing, we'll communicate out to the RPA manager that there's a task to run. It'll wake up, it'll start a bot. And of course, I have this slowed down so that it's a little easier to follow along at full speed and running autonomously. The bots are much more efficient. But we're going to do a little bit different path here this time than the last one. The first thing we're going to do is do some navigation within our OnBase client to show that the bot can actually navigate OnBase. So you'll see that we're going to select the document tab at the top. We're going to click the keyword button to show our keyword panel. And now we can copy these keyword values, which we need to enter into our ERP. Once we've done that, we'll go ahead and launch our ERP application. We'll navigate to create invoice and we'll drop this information in. And there you have it. So again, two pretty straightforward tasks, but imagine these happening in relatively high volume throughout the course of the day, we can really save a lot of time and increase the accuracy. We're not going to make any type of typing errors when we have the bot transferring information from one system to another. So now let's take a few minutes to talk about this RPA toolkit and what it's comprised of. Regardless of the RPA product that you have, and there's quite a few of them, they generally all have the same components. The analyst is a tool for documenting your processes. The designer is for actually programming the robots, the conductor for actually running the robots, and the manager for scheduling and monitoring all of your bot activity. We'll dive into a few of these in more detail. First, the analyst tool. This allows someone like a business analyst or even an end user to walk through a process that they use today and to capture each and every step, every application, every screen in those applications, each button press, mouse click, data entry, a complete detailed visualization of a process. And this can be useful for us in many ways. It can be used to simply document a process in a very clear and specific way that we can use as a current state document for a process improvement project. We can use it for training. You can use it to train new hires and give them a step-by-step guide to a process that they need to follow, ensuring that everyone is following the process in the exact same way. But maybe even most interesting for me, at least, is this can be used as an input into our designer to give us a baseline for our robotic process automation. So speaking of the designer, this is where we actually program our bots. And this isn't just another example of the low-code applications that are popping up everywhere that allow us to solve problems within our organization without having a lot of detailed programming knowledge. You simply drag and drop actions from the toolbox out onto the field here and accomplish things like open an application, click the mouse, enter some text, read a result, download a document. Whatever you need to do, it's easy to string these steps together in a logical fashion. And then you can just run the bot right from your tool and test it out and tweak it and perfect it and get it working just exactly right before we publish it out and let it just start working for us day in and day out. Now we'll come back and revisit this tool in a minute when we talk a little bit more about the workflow specific actions. Here, we skipped over the conductor because the conductor doesn't actually have a user interface. It's just software running bots as fast and efficiently as it can. But this is what the Hyland Manager, RPA Manager. And with the manager, we can orchestrate all of the bot activity. You can have many, many bots running, and those bots can share workloads for specific tasks, or a bot can handle many separate tasks. In fact, the bots can run 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, so they can always be fully utilized. And the manager helps us decide which bots will run which jobs, at what times, or in response to what events. In fact, it's a lot easier to boss bots around than it is to boss people. Okay, so swinging into the third topic in our agenda here, let's dig a little deeper into how we connect our bot and our workflow together. So it's going to get a little bit more detailed here. Not so much that you should be worried, but you know, if you're familiar with OnBase workflow, this will resonate with you. So first, looking at things from the bot side and within the designer tool, we now have a set of actions specific to communicating with OnBase directly from within the bot. We can retrieve keyword data like we did when we were creating our vendor record or our invoice records in the ERP. We can upload documents and index them directly from the bot. Imagine having a bot monitoring mailboxes, Dropbox sites, file folders, etc., and then automatically adding that content to OnBase so that people can consume it or so that workflows can be initiated. It's pretty amazing how much we can accomplish with just a few basic commands. From the OnBase side, it's even easier. We just simply need to instruct the manager which bot we'd like to run. We can do this with the built-in actions of the workflow to just designate which bot we'd like to run and the command to actually instruct it to go ahead and start. And by the way, today I've shown you examples of RPA bots being initiated from ad hoc actions and workflow. And that's not really ideal. That just helps me from a demonstration perspective. What you really want is to have the bot kicked off automatically by the workflow. The workflow's automatic, the bot's automatic, and nobody has to do anything. And that's the way we're going to increase our automation levels in our workflows and get more work done. So as a quick run here, so let's just summarize what the topics we covered. We talked about how our workflows are often a mix of automatic and manual steps. We showed how RPA can be used to remove some of those manual steps. And we talked about the components of the RPA toolkit to program our bots and accomplish that. And finally, a peek at how we can handle the handoffs in between the bots and our OnBase workflow. So with that, Nella, should we check and see if we have any questions?
Yes, I think we do have a couple in there so far. It is time for questions, so we're going to go over the ones we have here, but please feel free to type in your questions so we can answer them here, or we can review them later through email with you. Do you see those questions?
Yeah, I can. So terrific, John. So what are the pros and cons of using an ERP API versus RPA for loading the transaction data? I would say that we always want to strive to use an API or programming interface first. That's usually our best bet. That's going to give us the most speed, accuracy, consistency. It's going to be future-proof from changes from the ERP manufacturer of that software. As new versions come out, the programming interfaces are maintained, so we don't have to change things. One of the things about bots to be mindful of is if the target application that you're automating changes, then the bot may have to change as well to account for that. The second question is, what happens if the RPA sends data to the ERP that's invalid or incomplete? And so there's a lot of, it's easy to program in the bots the happy path, let's say that, the ideal case for if everything goes well. But the real art to RPA programming and bot development is to actually anticipate and account for those exception cases as well, so that the bot can gracefully handle something that doesn't go the way you want it to on either side of the equation, and can take the appropriate action. And then finally, John, your last question about OnBase security incorporated into RPA. The commands in the RPA tool for accessing OnBase documents and keywords are going to be respected by the OnBase security model. Those are super good questions, and thanks for asking them. Any other questions? If not, I'll leave you with a few final thoughts. The first is, don't forget that you can use RPA independent of workflow. You don't need to start with workflow and then add RPA. There are circumstances where RPA can handle a task independent on its own. In fact, they're very much workflow engines in their own right. So they can handle certain things that don't involve OnBase or documents, for example, quite well. The other thing is you can use them in sort of a hybrid fashion where they're working not instead of or in place of your knowledge workers, but alongside them in a hybrid fashion that allows you to complete tasks faster and have them be sort of less labor intensive, having the bot do all of the the typing and the heavy lifting, but still allowing your knowledge worker to give that key insight that that a process may need. And then lastly, there are a lot of RPA products on the market, and Navient can help you with your other products besides Hyland RPA. And in fact, we have a Cryon RPA tool that can be used, and it is also capable of interacting with your OnBase system and accomplishing all of the same things that we did today, maybe just not as seamlessly as the OnBase workflow that we saw. And with that, I'll thank you for your time today. Have a wonderful afternoon and take care.
Thanks, Jeff. Just a reminder, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, don't forget to complete that survey that's after this webinar. And if you have any questions that you did not get to ask or we didn't get to answer, please reach out to support@navient.com. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.